Welcome to another episode of PwC Tech Talks. I'm Mitra Bast, lead partner for strategic innovation and technology at PwC, and also the co-lead of our Women in Tech initiative. Today, we have an impressive lineup of tech women who'll be discussing what's probably one of the best kept secrets of developing great applications: how great UX makes great code. While the term UX was initially coined in the 90s, the practice of human-centered design goes back thousands of years, starting with the Chinese philosophy of feng shui, which refers to the spatial arrangement of objects in relation to the flow of energy to harmonize the human experience. In more recent history, and along the way, we've seen the evolution of UX in companies like Toyota and the value of human input in the 1940s, and Disney and the magical experiences that were created beginning in the 60s, and with Xerox and Apple and the birth of personal computing in the 80s. And in the 90s, Don Norman coined the phrase UX, and with that, basically started a more disciplined approach to this capability. Today, our panel will discuss how they influence the development of great applications at PwC. Our lineup of tech women will also be kicking off the celebration of Women's History Month, with many events following that, with a grand finale on March 25th. Celebrating women's history is a symbolic reminder of the great work women have done in our history, and unfortunately, the frequent dismissal of our impact and the persisting barriers to gender equality. By celebrating women, we remind each other and the world that together, in an inclusive and equitable environment, we can build a better future. So now let's go to our panel and learn how great UX makes great code. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the panel. And with that, I'll hand it over to my co-lead, Andrea Fishman.
Thanks again for joining us today. As Mitra mentioned, my name is Andrea Fishman. I'm the co-leader with her of our Women in Tech program. And I'm a partner in our TMT advisory practice, working with CMOs to help them operate more effectively through the use of technology and experience. We have a great panel today. This whole concept of design and development coming together with new tools, new methods is something we're all seeing. And frankly, we're all kind of designers at this point, whether you're designing a process flow or a creative design or a tech architecture. Experience matters in all parts of our business. And what's really exciting, as Mitra mentioned, is our panel today really hits design in all the different phases of our experience, from digital experience through strategy, through execution. And so I'm really excited to introduce the panelists, have them tell you a little bit about who they are, and then jump into our topic. So I'm going to turn it over to Jessica, and then we'll keep going. So Jessica, over to you.
Thank you, Andrea. Hi, everyone. I'm Jessica Sheeler. I've been with the firm for 7 years, and I'm currently a manager in the Experience Center. I bridge the gap between design and technology, and I bring your user experiences to life through code. Currently, I'm working on a project in the pharma life sciences space. I am currently the solution architect on an intelligent automation platform that we're building. But I started out as the lead web application engineer, where I collaborated very closely with the design team to bring their vision to life.
Thanks, Jess. Great to have you here. I've definitely seen this evolve over the years in collaborating with you. Michelle, can you tell us a little bit about where you come from?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I am Michelle Wong. I lead the design team for our tax technology and development practice at PwC. My team and I are focused on designing, on crafting tax applications that meet the needs of our business and user stakeholders. I am so excited to be here today with this amazing group of panelists, and I can't wait to tell you how my team and I are working with developers to create great UX, great code, great experiences that are reusable and scalable.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Michelle. Now we're going to move to the product side of our house. Mufti, can you tell us how the role of products ties into our services in our tax world as we think about the connections here?
Right. Thanks, Andrea. As Michelle said, I'm so excited to be here to share how we work in product. I'm a product manager at Insights Officer. We sit under PwC Products and Technology. Having a background in computer science helps me bridge the gap between customer needs and also understand UI, UX, and the engineering team side of things. So together, we are trying to bridge the gap between customer needs and bringing the features into fruition with our product at Insights Officer. Our focus is usually on humanizing our product journey and helping us build useful product for our customers.
That's awesome, Mufti. And I love that whole concept of humanizing the journey. And I think there's probably no one better to talk about how design can and experience impacts the humanizing more than Larissa. So Larissa, maybe a quick intro and then we'll kick it off.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm Larissa Meek. I'm a creative director at PwC's Experience Center, and I co-lead our experience design team. My role as a creative director is to push for UX, great UX, and ultimately be an advocate for the end users. And just to share, one of my favorite projects was an opportunity that I had to design a portal for clinical trials, which is really, really interesting from a UX perspective because this can be really a complicated experience for end users and really emotional. And a lot of times it's their last hope. So it was really important for us on that project to consider the emotions involved when we design this experience. So I'm excited to be here today.
Yeah, that was a great project. I loved working on that with you. And I think when we can apply our experience strategy and our technology to solve real problems like getting people into clinical trials or tracking compliance with medical devices, it makes it feel very real. So it's what inspires me every day to work with all of you. So let's level set on like what the heck are UI development, UI prototyping, design. I think everyone uses these words, agile, that's like a big word these days, but I think we might need to all just align on what does that mean. So Michelle, like, align for us, like what is the difference for you between UI and UX?
I really appreciate this question, Andrea, because there is so much mystery and also online memes about the difference between UI and UX. The acronyms UI, user interface, and UX, user experience, are definitely not interchangeable. There is a tendency to think of them as being interchangeable, but they are actually mutually exclusive. They are not the same thing. They are instead tightly coupled. For us to be able to reach and deliver a delightful and intuitive experience, you need both UX and UI to work together. And I like to think of UI as form, so what something looks like, and UX as function, how that something behaves. And it really doesn't matter how much time you spend on the UX if the UI is underwhelming. And it also really doesn't matter how much time you spend on making something look really cool and really creating a compelling UI if the UX is also underwhelming.
Right.
I try to think of it as, when you go to the store and you've heard about this new product on the shelf and it has all of the functionality that you could ever ask for. But when you see it on the shelf, you don't really want to pick it up. You do not want to spend money on it because you're not inspired to do so. The UI is not compelling. And similarly, you could go to the store and pick something up from the shelf because the UI is just really beautiful. But once you open the box and you take out the product and you start experiencing it, you put it right back in the box and ship it back because the UX was really frustrating. So
that's
definitely.
Great example. Michelle, you hit it spot on, right? It's almost like there's three things that have to come together. It has to work well from a technical perspective. It has to solve a business problem, and the experience has to be delightful for the users, right? So all three of those things need to come together for a great experience. Mukti, like when you're making products, like how does that happen?
Yeah, spot on, Michelle. And just to build on that, I would say that whenever you are trying to work with UI UX team in a product side, we try to focus on the UI, which is the aesthetic details, which give you more or influence the branding of the product. Whereas when it comes to UX, it influences the ease of adoption. A good UX will always and always influence customers using your product easily, trying to use it intuitively. That's what UX is all about. And having a combination of UI UX is your product will, have a better user experience. Not only that, it will be having great branding overall. So in that sense, we think that this will, for your product, you definitely need both, not one or the other.
Larissa, you see a lot of this when you're sitting at the intersection between the front end team and the technologists. Can you maybe kind of talk about the connection on the code side?
Yeah, definitely. One of the things I think that's really important for technologists to understand, and the entire team in general, is that when you go through the design process, it's organic and it's messy. And I love this saying of, it's a series of failures until you figure out what works. And it's really embracing that learning process that's really important. And to do that early and often. If you wait to bring in UX until you've made some of these requirements and technology decisions and even business process decisions, at some point you end up with UX debt later in the process. So it's important early in the process to use things like design thinking, whiteboarding things out, getting the entire team and end users to roll up their sleeves and be involved in that process. It's really the responsibility, not just from a UX perspective of UX practitioners to create good UX, but for everybody on the team to really keep it top of mind and consider what their role is in adding to creating a great experience.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And that whole concept of bringing people in early so they're hearing the same thing and influencing each other is certainly a best practice. Jess, want to kind of close us out on sort of connectivity?
Yeah, so touching on that point of bringing everyone in early, it's also really important to bring in your technologist in at the beginning of a project, because you could have your design team go off on a completely different direction and find out the technology isn't capable of doing what the design is asking of the technology. So it's very important to build these connections at the beginning of the project between design and tech, so you have a seamless experience for the user at the end of the day.
Yeah, and I think it even goes back to how we scope projects, right? If the technologists aren't consulted, you could really even get into a position where they're like, hey, the technology doesn't, traditionally do that. For us to make that happen really becomes quite complicated. So the good news is I think we've all been part of a story where this has worked well together. When design and development came in from the beginning, collaboration happened and success was achieved. So let's start on our product world. Mukti, could you maybe tell us how you guys created your product and what you've learned from that for us as we build more products and have more integrated teams?
Absolutely, Andrea. Thank you so much for letting me share the story. So I work at a product called Insights Officer, as I mentioned earlier. To give a background about this product, this is for automated bookkeeping solution, as well as providing insights to our customer about their financial needs. So this product is made from people coming together from accounting world, and then people also joining hands on the product side and the engineering side, the UI UX side to build this product. Now, initially, when we were working on this product, we only had financial insights built. The process was that the product managers would work on with the CPAs and the accountants to get more about, to get the knowledge about the customer needs, what sort of financial accounting terminologies they use, and what are the things that we can build in our product. And then the product manager will take it to the designers and discuss the user needs. So essentially what we were doing is the product manager would work closely with the UI UX team here to describe the customer needs, to describe the pain points, and help guide the UI UX team there. And once that whole design was ready, it will then be offloaded to the tech lead or the engineering team. And we would see that there was a lot of friction between the designers and the engineering team because the designers were, pretty ambitious while designing it, and they did not think about the feasibility of whether it can be implemented or not. So then what we did, we changed and decentralized this whole process and included all of the engineering team, especially the tech lead, way ahead in the process. So whenever we were capturing the needs from our accounting team, we started including the tech leads and the designers there itself, just to understand and bridge the gap. Not only it developed an empathy between each other and understanding of each other world, but also a synergy developed eventually. And then the product that we built, the features that we built, we saw an 87% increase in the user sessions for our customers, and a hike of 80% of our user logins. So that was absolutely a game changer for us to get together and share each other domain knowledge and build something unique for our product.
Mukti, thank you for sharing that and giving that specific kind of metric at the end of how do we know if it's intuitive or not, right? We see adoption, but
yeah,
sometimes we think it's intuitive and then, we've outsmarted ourselves and we show the users and they're like, what the heck is that? So Larissa, how do we not get ahead of ourselves and over-engineer something that we think is intuitive, but our user base maybe doesn't resonate with? How do we prevent that?
Yeah, to that point, usability testing is such an important tool in our toolkit when we try to understand whether things work for end users. And the other thing I'll add to that, when you are doing usability testing, and just to kind of explain what that is for those that don't know, that's when we create prototypes and we create a simulation of what we think a future state experience may be. And we typically do this incrementally, taking a specific end-to-end task that we need a user to finish or complete. And we basically test the interface or test the experience with the end user. We're not testing the end user, but we give them tasks to complete through the experience. And what that lets us know is where they're having pain points with the experience. And also we try to do that with a variety of different types of users, whether it's somebody that's maybe very proficient at technology or maybe somebody that's a new employee, for example. So it gives us a good baseline to understand from different points of view, taking those insights and moving forward with improvements in terms of the interface. But it's a really important tool in our toolkit. And the reason I like it is you can get a lot of insights from a fairly small testing sample versus something like other types of testing where you're doing surveys where you need quite a large number, but that doesn't always get you to the why, which is what's really great about usability testing is people can talk a little bit more about the root cause of what the problem is, which is really important.
Right. I love usability testing because we get real-time feedback and we can see where people are struggling, right? You can see it in real time when they're trying to complete a form or they're looking for content that we think is logical, but they don't see it. And in many ways, deciphering those users requires a whole new set of skills that I know I didn't have at first. And so learning how design thinking works and learning about prototyping helped me understand this. Michelle, you've been very successful in your career here, but I'm guessing you made some pivots along the way to pick up new skill sets. Can you share with the team sort of how you've made those pivots and what are some of the newer skills that you've picked up to kind of enhance your journey and your success here?
I'd be happy to. I really appreciate this question because oftentimes we are asked by potential new hires, potential interns, new hires and new interns, new joiners, what are some of those skills that they will need in order to be successful today in this industry? And I like to think that there are still some skills from a while back that have remained timeless. One of those that is near and dear to my heart is the ability for designers to still understand and apply basic design principles to their work. Design principles are timeless and they will carry on with us. They'll stand the test of time and they will always be part of our process. In addition to those timeless skills, designers need to pivot and also master new skills. The first one that I like to encourage designers to pick up on or develop is problem finding. gone really are the days of us designers being handed design briefs and being told exactly what to do and check the list and make sure we accomplish every single thing on the design brief. We want to be part of the process. We want to craft a design brief with everyone else in the room. So the ability to ask the right questions to make sure that we are designing and delivering the right technology is very important.
Yeah.
Additionally, the problem finding also leads to my second point, which is gathering requirements and managing requirements. Similarly to being handed over a design brief, designers sometimes, myself included, can have the tendency of just waiting for requirements to be given to us. So we'll sit here and look at the person next to us and say, I'm just waiting for your requirements, and then I can start. But that is not necessarily the most productive way to get to a successful experience. Designers today need to learn how to collaborate with everyone on the team to actually define those requirements and really own the experience.
Yeah, I think that's right, Michelle. That whole understanding element of where, not just where you fit in, but the bigger strategy of why we're doing that, I think becomes super important.
Right.
So Larissa, you lead a really large design team who maybe traditionally were given those requirements, but are now having to understand more of like the business. So how is your team pivoting to enhance the way that they consume the business problem and use that to impact their design strategy?
Yeah. So when you talk about that, Andrea, I feel so much emotion about just how much design has changed over the years. And I've been working in digital for a really long time. And it's really fascinating how much things have changed. We were all very familiar with the term design thinking, and it sort of became a business term to give designers and creative thinking a seat at the table when it comes to business. We're now in a situation where we have all of these wonderful craftspeople with these really unique skill sets. And what we've been talking a lot about is business thinking for designers, which means when we talk about UX, we as UX practitioners and designers need to really be familiar with different industries and different sectors and really get in and understand the pain points of a business and what those business goals are. So in terms of how the design industry has changed as a whole, even when we use the word design, it can mean a lot of different things. But a big thing that we've been focusing on with our team is really design strategy. And it's one thing to look at something and say that it's aesthetically pleasing, that it looks nice. But what it really comes down to is creating impact and creating results. And when you go about creating designs, you want to be very clear about what outcomes you're trying to achieve. It's not about output or the quantity of what you're trying to create, but really being strategic about what types of behaviors you're trying to drive with the actual end users that are engaging with the experience that you're creating.
Yeah, I think that's great. Knowing what you're trying to measure really helps drive that thinking. So let's pivot a little bit. So clearly we're working together more collaboratively. People are learning more about why they're doing things, and that helps us scope and architect better. But, frankly, like the dev world is changing too, right? We've gone from waterfall to agile to pods. I got to imagine that as our design world is changing and those tools change, the fact that our methodologies are evolving too means everyone's sort of in flux. So, Michelle, I'm going to pivot back to you for a second. How has collaboration changed as we've gone from a kind of a linear waterfall technology approach to a leaner, more sprint-based, agile environment?
Andrea, we work so much better together than we did 10 years ago. And I know all of us here have at some point in time experienced some sort of tension between designers and developers.
No one's ever seen that.
I remember designers on the team, pointing fingers or frowning at developers for not staying true to their markups, for, reinventing the experience. And I also, have experienced the other side where developers have chuckled at designers for being so ambitious, like Mukti mentioned, being so ambitious, having such wild imaginations and thinking about all kinds of unrealistic features. That story is very common in many organizations, many teams, and it's been going on for a long time. But the story is changing because developers and designers, we are learning to work together better, and we are both sides are realizing the value of the other team member. And to get the developers are realizing that great UX does lead to great code. And similarly, the designer is also understanding that without great code, the UX will not be great, no matter how great they think it is.
That's a great point. And I think one thing that you've sort of hinted at, which I'll kind of call out, I think the speed of working together has fundamentally changed that, right? It used to be handoffs. There'd be a strategy team, which hands off to creative, which hands off to the technical team, which hands off to QA. But and that did cause a lot of tension because people didn't have a chance to input. But with everyone working in quick 2-week turnarounds and fast prototyping, I think that helps accelerate the collaboration and maybe starts to be a tool we can use to break down some of those tensions. Jess, you're one of the queens of driving us through sprints. Talk to us about how maybe you're helping reduce some of that tension because the way we work has changed.
Yeah, I think it's great that Michelle mentioned the tension between designers and developers, because I've been on the side of a developer sitting there pixel pushing. And there's nothing more frustrating to a developer than a designer sitting over their shoulder saying, could you move that 1 pixel to the left or to the right, up, down? But the relationship between designers and developers is changing. It's getting so much better as time goes on. People are realizing the value of doing a pairing between your designers and developers. It helps the agile, especially within agile, it helps speed up your development process, speed up your design process, and even your prototyping process. With the project that I've been on, I've seen the design team come and go a couple of times, but I've been fortunate enough to stay on the project for as long as I have been. And since I've been on it from the beginning, I was part of those design decisions and to help drive that strategic direction, especially as far as tech goes. And working closely with the designers in the very beginning, I recommended using a design system to quickly integrate and iterate over your designs as the sprint goes on. So working with the design team, we were able to build off of that. And as the next design team came on, I was able to help inform the decisions we had made. So when we delivered a new release to our users that had new features, they were the exact same as the old features, and you didn't all of a sudden see a brand new user experience, which is really important for that consistency.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that whole reduction in not having those long runways, I think has kind of changed the nature of the game. And I mean, Larissa, as you think about timing, right? It used to be you had a long creative period. Now it's real time, right? And there's pressure to get concepting and prototypes out quickly. Like, how does that change your world on a day-to-day basis?
It's so different now. I think if you're comfortable, you're not doing it right. You really have to be okay with not waiting for things to be perfect, because to Jess's point, if you're pushing pixels and it takes that long, you become a roadblock as a UX practitioner or designer. It's really the state in which we're working is finding the right rhythm as a team, really focusing on what's near next and getting just enough done to move to the next step, and a constant mindset of constant improvement and looking for those opportunities. So it has changed quite a lot. And I don't really miss the days when we had long design runways. I mean, on one hand, it was nice to sort of be able to think about everything, but it created a lot of problems downstream when you didn't have the opportunity to continuously refine. So while things, move much quicker now and we're able to get software in the hands of end users, it really comes back, I think, to even leadership on projects to make a commitment to continuous improvement and enable the teams to incrementally work towards those steps as a whole team together. And, really that's one of the things I love about from a BXT perspective is it really takes all of these different mindsets coming together to make that happen.
Yeah. So noted, we need to be more agile. Noted, it comes from all parts of the team, and we all need to be comfortable with the change, which is exciting, right? Even in terms of how we staff and how we estimate a product versus a solution is changing. So this is really exciting, right? We've talked about the ways we work. We've talked a little bit about the teaming. So where do we go from here? Like, on your next product, on your next release, like what are you excited about? What's next for you?
Yeah, To touch on what Jessica was saying, that we are having design systems, and what Larissa was saying, that long runways are, no, now everything is agile, right? We are doing everything in our capacity to reduce the time we spend and deliver things, in a faster pace than normal, like having more velocity is what we hear from every team. Now, we know that technology is advancing. We have image recognition, we have computer vision, we have things like machine learning, emotional intelligence. Uh, this whole idea of what if the wireframing and prototyping phase, where there's a lot of back off and handoff, I would say, not back off, between the customer understanding the user needs, what if that can be converted into an automated wireframing? What if machines can give us option as to what these whatever the customer needs are? If machines can give us an option of these are the 5 wireframes, like pick and choose, kind of, and then if those wireframes could be converted into code, there are technologies being explored in that phase where lo-fi prototypes can be converted into digital prototypes, and then prototypes can be converted into code. We can have an option of whether it could be React.js or Angular or whatever. So that's really where I want to invest in and explore that area to reduce our cycle time, basically, in product development and get things easily out of the way.
That's, Mukti, so exciting. I love how we're thinking about the low-code solutions in automating production so that we can really focus our mindset on the tough challenges and not on the volume. Yeah. Michelle, well, talk to us a little about standardizing and acceleration. Like, how do we make that real? Because I think the more we could leverage technology to solve the monotonous stuff, the more we can, as a team, solve the more complicated stuff.
Right. And I love Mukti's idea and prediction of reducing cycle times, and acceleration and automation are definitely trend words, but they are really necessary trend words that we should, as much as we can, try to embrace. A lot of organizations have leveraged design systems as a first step towards accelerating and automating both design and development. And I am excited about how we can push those design systems even further. Design systems tackle automation and acceleration and consistency at a UI level, for example, a button. But I am excited about how my team and I are working with developers to think about how to accelerate larger experiences. So instead of thinking of making a button reusable, we're thinking about how to make a common service or a common experience reusable and scalable. For example, I'm not sure about you, but I've seen multiple versions of a commenting feature on my team and on other teams. So how do we make sure we just build that commenting experience once to be leveraged by many others, benefiting technologists, designers, and even business?
You're spot on. I mean, just as an aside, I'm working with a big telecom client right now, and they have 800 different websites. And so they're trying to think of just something as simple as, why do we need 800 logins and 800 reset password technical capabilities, let alone the design experiences? So we're working with them to use content management and identity management to go from 800 to 1. So just kind of a practical example, Michelle, of how do you make that real? Jess, what are you seeing from your side? Like, where are the tech teams going in terms of this standardization and reusability?
As Mukti and Michelle have already alluded to, there's a lot of reusability that tech teams are trying to implement in all of their projects. It helps accelerate setting up a new project. It helps pretty much all around as far as your code goes, as far as DevOps goes, security goes. And even, Andrea, going back to your point about having 800 pages that are for the same company, standardizing systems like login, standardizing microservices. How can we reuse microservices from project to project or even within the same ecosystem? So I'm seeing a lot of that in the tech world, especially from developers. So I think that's kind of where you're going to see the world go is just reusability and acceleration.
Right. And it's amazing because we benefit from it, from quality and consistency, and our clients benefit from it because as they have repeatable processes, it's actually lower cost for them to operate. Larissa, kind of close us out on this. Where does, do we risk monotony from an experience perspective? Like, how do we prevent consistency from being boring?
I think it's a really great question, Andrea. And what's interesting is if you think back on the evolution of design patterns and things that we're accustomed to seeing, like so many things look so similar. And the reason that is because, companies have monopolized on things that people use most often. So we see common UI patterns across the entire digital landscape. And there's a benefit to that because people don't have to learn new systems and new ways to navigate. But on the other hand, to what was mentioned earlier about sort of the curating, we almost become curators rather than designers to some extent, where I think things will shift, or where is an important place to focus is thinking about the personality of your experience. More and more, it's really important to think about the content. So from a layout perspective, it's an open question. Have we reached a plateau? Are things going to change? It may largely depend on the type of product or experience you're designing and how far you can push the envelope. Mm-hmm. There still is a lot of really creative and exciting experiences out there. But I think more and more going forward, it's really to think about how do you humanize that experience and how do you add delight and how do you infuse that in an appropriate way in the experience that you're creating, while maybe building upon some of these common patterns that really add to that mental model, easier for people to navigate.
We were having a conversation yesterday when you think about common patterns, and someone made the comment, well, we used to have the hamburger navigation, which was the layers. Now we have the waffle navigation, the dots. So I think maybe we're getting healthier. Maybe our next navigation will be like the salad navigation. But it's interesting to see sort of these patterns evolve, and then how do you be creative in using them so you don't have to teach people something new, but still give them something that's appealing. So really exciting conversation from Michelle to Mukti, Jessica, Larissa. You've all brought really unique perspectives in terms of how all these skills come together. So we have a really broad and interesting range of participants from across the firm, not just women in tech, but men in tech and everyone in tech, and really just a broad array of folks here. How do they get involved? What can they do to join the community, learn more, and bring some of these skills into their day-to-day world? Larissa, where do people start?
Well, I think there's so many great online resources. There's a lot of great blogs, a lot of interesting places to go look and get inspired. Some of my personal favorite things to do is to go to website galleries. And I just love looking to see what other companies are doing, what other creative people are doing, what students are doing. And I think it kind of starts there is just, I love to just see what's going on in the space. And that really is one of the biggest things that inspires me, because it gets you outside of your own box and you get to really see what other ideas people have. And it's really important to constantly do that so you can keep a pulse check on how are things evolving, how are things changing, because it moves fast. And
it moves so fast. I mean,
absolutely.
I left for Japan for 2 years to work in the EC there. And when I came back, there was a whole new prototyping tool set. There's a whole new set of tools. And it wasn't like we weren't prototyping there, but the speed, especially that like the US firm is moving, and the whole upskilling in your tomorrow, I think is really accelerating all these tools. So Mukti, I'm going to end it with you. Like, how did you learn some of these new tools, and like where did you go to continue to upskill for someone who already is upskilled?
To be honest, I did start exploring the online communities, as Larissa mentioned, but then I started asking the question of why is this designed in a certain way? So while walking in the street, why is this car parking kiosk so difficult to manage, Or why does my husband doesn't get to know how to operate the oven? So what is there? Like, how do we design it better? How can we operate it better? Starts to become more relatable, and then you dive into the whys of why and how we can make it more better and more intuitive for our users. Yeah. So that's how I started to learn, to be honest. And if you are having completely no idea, just start looking into the online forums, as Larissa mentioned, and then just look around you. And there are so many things that we can design.
And there's even so many things here internally. What's nice is that the firm is exposing more of how we do it in a methodological, not the right word, way. So I just saw a BXT Agile playbook, that was available on HQ. There's tons of content in the digital labs that are for all levels that I think are really helpful. And then there's all kinds of programs, like our digital badging program covers everything from user experience to advanced analytics. So you don't even really need to leave our four walls, right? Join some of these communities, download one of these things, try out Ultrix. Like there's a lot of different ways that we can kind of test the waters in a pretty non-risky way. So thank you all for powerful, innovative women sharing your real stories in this tech talk. I'd ask you to join our Yammer channel, continue to engage. There's much more coming from this community. So thank you, Mitra, for kicking us off. Thank you all for being great panelists. And we look forward to questions coming in and feedback that we can answer. But very exciting and very tangible. So have a great day and thanks again.